Mother, we have visitors. Well, you were very quiet when you were cried.
It's a cemetery.
Yes, and normally I would be quiet too, but not today. All right, I want to thank you all for coming round and visiting us today. Now, I have a great deal to recall, and time is short, so I just want to state it plain and simple. I worked very hard all my life, even as a child. You might say that I never stopped working at whatever it was I had to do. My father died when he was young and left the 7 of us to fend for ourselves on our farm in White Creek. That's Washington County. Now, the Pryns are spread far and wide throughout all the capital region, but we were farmers first and foremost. And so that's what I did until I was nearly 30 years of age.
You see, Howard, like most farm children, attended a country district school during the winter months only, and he had to abandon his formal schooling to help provide family income at the age of 15. It was then that he began working on farms month to month and eventually raised enough money to buy his own farm in White Creek, which he ran quite successfully for many years. I was born to a small family, the Kenyons. I was educated in White Creek and became very active in the Presbyterian Church.
My Uncle Samuel heard about my success on the farm, and so he came and offered me an entry-level position at Finch Pruyn Company. Now, I was already 29 years old, but I knew that I knew my uncle well, and I knew that if he was offering me a position, I dare not turn it down. An opportunity to learn the paper mill industry. Well, it's an industry that was already spreading out in all its various branches. And so, I moved to 58 Park Street and began a new life here in Glens Falls.
I knew that Howard would be successful at whatever he tried. But most of all, it was his sense of responsibility that I admired about him. There was never a more industrious, intelligent, and sincere man, I thought.
Stop.
I knew we would meet again when he was able, and by 1887, we were married, and I too began a new life in Glens Falls.
I soon mastered the office chores, and so moved on to more serious responsibilities with the company, such as a bookkeeper or cashier for the company's local accounts. And then I was asked to take charge of our sawmill at Feeder Dam, which led to the supervision of a fleet of 30 canal boats.
In time, Howard, with his uncle and his cousin, became controlling investors in the Glens Falls, Sandy Hill, and Fort Edward Street Railway. He also, with partners, established the Corinth National Bank, of which he became vice president. It sounds like hyperbole, but it seemed there was not a task or responsibility that Howard wouldn't tackle with all his might. I became a mother to our only child, a boy, Kenyon Pruyn, and I promised that he would receive the excellent formal schooling which his father had been denied by circumstance.
Aside from my company duties, I began building and selling homes, all of which we were contracted to be paid for in small, manageable installments. I'm proud to say that I never had a default or a foreclosure. I didn't want anyone to experience the difficulties that my family had at the loss of my father.
Life in Glens Falls was wonderful, and busy, of course.
Oh, yes.
Our son Kenyon went on to study at MIT and became an invaluable factor in my husband's lumber company, the Pruyn Lumber Supply Company in Mechanicville. And then one fateful day, on June 19th, 1901, we were returning home from a business trip to the Fort Edward paper mill yards with a newly purchased team of horses from W.E. Spire, They were a spirited bunch of horses, and we were going at a brisk pace. Perhaps too brisk. A water main break had caused an unseen hole in the road, and one of our horses' legs caught in the hole, and our carriage careened across Broadway onto Liberty. We were both thrown from the carriage. My neck was broken, and I died moments after the crash.
I was also badly bruised with injuries to my head and neck. I was able to secure the services of the Fort Edward supervisor to deliver the disastrous news to Miami's mother and brother in Cambridge. Well, the outpouring of sympathy was reported in all the local papers as everyone loved Miami. A sweeter person I could not have known. Yes. My life was never the same, and I still had many challenges left ahead of me. 2 years later, in partnership with George Finch, L.W. Underwood, George F. Emerson, and Granville B. Ingley of Glens Falls, I reorganized the Imperial Wallpaper Company, and eventually saved it. In 1903, I met and married my nurse, Elizabeth Elizabeth Dempster. I'm sorry, dear. Who is the sister of Mrs. Walter Garrett, who is also residing here at Pineview. Together we had a son, Howard Sewell Pruyn, and he became a banker down in Albany. In 1904, Finch Pruyn and Company incorporated, and I became their treasurer. But the untimely death of Mr. Finch, shortly after we completed construction of our new paper mill, was a devastating blow to the management of the company. I became overwhelmed with the additional work and responsibilities. My health began to fail. And so, I had to quit the cold environs of Glens Falls in order to have better, warmer winters down in North Carolina. I sold my shares in Finch Pruyn by 1913, and as my health appeared to be improving, I took on the challenge of trying to rescue a lumber mill down in North Carolina. And so we established the LRL Lumber Company, and I served as its president. But the burden was too great, and by 1920 I was back in Glens Falls to put my affairs in order. Once home on Glen Street and Grove Avenue, I began making provisions for Elizabeth, my two sons, and my two darling grandchildren, Kenyon Hall and Alice Miami Pruyn. And when I finally did succumb to my illness, the resources were in place for Elizabeth to relocate to Florida, to remarry, to start a new life for herself.
Howard was laid to rest here in Queensberry, near the city that afforded us the best of life lessons that one could hope for. Here he is at peace, after lifetimes of ingenuity, hard work, and success. We know that the greatest life lesson we have learned is to give, and give more of yourself. The reward we receive in return is priceless.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Shall we, my dear?